Okay, Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. So we're back for another video. And for today, we are going to continue with the next topic. Topic number 3 now. Okay, let me share with you slide. Okay, topic number 3 is about managing risk. So basically this topic is a summary of we've discussed 5 approaches relating to how to manage risk from the previous video. If you recall, from the previous video, we went through approaches like also. Give me a second. Yeah, approaches like also. We have the orange book. We have the Institute of Risk Management. We have the Australian, New Zealand framework, and obviously CIMA. Right, so we have 5 different approaches, and towards the end of the video as well, I mentioned that we can find some similarities between all 5 approaches. So for today, we summarize the relevant approaches, and we come out with how to manage risk according to a general approach. Okay, general approach. So here we finalize that we have 4 different steps. Okay, 4 different steps in how to manage risk. Number 1, we need to do risk assessment. Okay, we need to do risk assessment, assess the relevant risks, how to describe, how to identify all the risks, and you need to know your risk management policy, set up your for example, your risk tolerance. You need to, set according to the organization policy, and then how to respond to the risk, or sometimes we call them as treatment, how to treat the risk accordingly, and finally, how to report the risk. Okay, and this would be the common approach that can be used in managing risk in an organization, right? So first step, as I mentioned, is risk assessment, how to assess the relevant risk. So these steps comprise the analysis and evaluation, right, through 3 processes, which is number 1, identification. Step number 2, to describe the risk, and number 3 is estimation. So what does it mean by identification? So this aims to determine the organization's exposure to the uncertainty, and it requires thorough knowledge of the organization's strategy, products and services, and also all the relevant implications with regards to legal, economic, technological, and so on. So identification basically usually derive from the product owner, because they are the one who know their operations on daily basis, and they are the one who will expose themselves with the risk. So therefore, they are the one who will identify the relevant risk based on their experience on daily basis. And this identification requires a methodological approach in order to have quite a number of risks that they can gather from this identification process. And these are among the methods that can be used in order to identify the relevant risk. For example, number 1 is based on risk workshop. So this is a common activity that can be done in an organization where they conduct a series of workshops. Okay, and these workshops usually will be held in a separate separate setting from the office, whereby they will gather all the relevant heads or relevant managers and discuss what will be the types of risks that every department involved. Okay, so and basically the workshops will try to list down all the relevance. Okay, as I mentioned. The second option, okay, in order to gather all the relevant risks is by doing a consultation with the stakeholders. So who are the stakeholders? Obviously, stakeholders need consists of various parties, inclusive of the top management. Okay, they can do a survey, for example, with the customers or client, right? Depending on the nature of the business, again, they might have their shareholders and so on. So by doing this consultation basis, they can gather again a lot of piece of risk with regards to their organization. They also can do some benchmarking with other companies, for example. Okay, they do benchmarking with other companies, usually with some companies who are considered related, not related, but somehow equivalent to the company. This can be their competitors or some other similar companies, right? And therefore, this benchmarking basically try to compare if company, for example, have a certain risk they are exposed to. So our company who are, doing the same business as them might facing the same risk. Just as simple as, okay, your organization is a bank, for example, so you can compare with another bank what kind of risk another bank is having. So therefore, you as a managing the bank can come up with benchmarking reports, okay, and set up or list down, identify what are relevant risks. Okay, so this is another approach that you can gather in order to identify the relevant risks. You can do the scenario or what if analysis. So this is another method or technique that you use based on scenario analysis. And this is usually can be done together with workshops. Okay, one of the tools that can be used in order to gather all the information. Auditing and inspection usually comes from the audit reports. Okay, as one of the internal control, companies usually have their own audits, and this audit, the output of it usually is about audit reports. And these audit reports can highlight all the relevant risks that are exposed by certain, departments or sections of the business. So therefore, these audit reports will be very, very important to highlight possible risks that they have. Okay, as simple as when I used to work in the bank, okay, I was in the inspection and audit department, and one of the branch that I visited, they kept their important documents in a in a in a cabinet, but the cabinet is not locked and it is accessible by everyone in the office. And these important documents is actually private and confidential documents. So this can be highlighted, or which I should say, I highlighted this issue in my audit reports, and the audit reports will be an document to say that, okay, this is the kind of risk that happened in the branch. So we need to do something about it. Okay, so audit reports will be another identification measures in order to identify what are the risks involved in the business. Again, this is another tools that can be used. It's known as fishbone. All right. If you're not sure fishbone, you can Google and see. The fishbone is basically or sometimes known as cause and effect. Cause and effect diagram. Or in short, sometimes we just call them CE diagram or fishbone, as I mentioned just now. So what does it mean, fishbone? Or what does it, you know, what the fishbone do? You basically, fishbone, literally, the diagram will look like a fishbone. Okay, so they have cause at one side, for example, cause and effect on the other side. Okay, and the effect usually will be the problem or the risk itself. Okay, what are the effect? What are the risks? And we want to know what contribute to this risk. So therefore, the diagram will look something like this. So it will be like a fishbone. There are multiple level of causes. Okay, causes. So what are the problem? So you can identify one problem that appear in the business, right? And the components will be what will be the factors that contribute to that problem. So we can list down multiple, and you can add on depending on how many causes you have. So this shape is basically like a fishbone. Okay, and this will translate in how to manage or how to identify the risk. And on top of that, there are many other research methods that can be used, interviews, okay, which is also part of like consultation just now, the surveys, okay, can be done online as well, and any other research methodology that can be used in order to get to the risk identification process. Okay, so here are some examples. Once you get the information, I've highlighted some examples here. For example, here from the financial risk point of view, example of the dependencies, availability of fund, or internal control even. So what are the risks when we talk about internal control? Fraud occurs because of inadequate. So meaning these are the risks that occur in the business, in the organization. And we can list down all the relevant risks in our identified risk. Okay, correct allocation of funds, for example, inadequate profit because of incorrect capital expenditures decision. So these are all related to the financial scorecard. And these are the example of risks related to the financial element of it. And these are the general identification of the risk. Okay. So again, if you can look at infrastructure, okay, from infrastructure point of view, the dependencies is people or staff. So what are the risks involved when we talk about staff? For example, failure to maintain health and safety standards. Okay, for example, if your organization is related to manufacturing companies and your staff procedures or your staff SOPs doesn't strict enough to deter that the staff not wearing safety helmets, for example. So therefore, there are the risks relating to maintaining or achieving health and safety standards. Right. Next, maybe for example, with regards to infrastructure processes, including IT infrastructure, it can be physical and also physical, okay, including staff, process, premises, or something system based as well. Okay, so IT controls are not available because of the virus or hacker activity. So these are the risks that you may face if you are expose yourself with information technology or information system. Okay, so obviously when we talk about risk, it doesn't mean that you cannot avoid it or whatnot, but yeah, you need to list out first what are the potential risks as a company. Okay, product manufacturing, for example, disruption because failure of supplier. Okay, your supplier is not doing the right job, and therefore, you have problems with your supplier and you are facing stock out, for example. Stock out will cause your production to stop or delay because you don't have enough materials to produce. So therefore, from infrastructure point of view, the risk is basically cost you for delay in production, for example. Okay, so this would be the effect from the risk. Another element of risk from reputational point of view. Okay, reputation risk. Okay, from brand image, public opinion, okay, regulated point of view, or CSR. So these are some of the examples you can read on your own, and it's self-explanatory. And you can check out what are the relevant risks related to reputation, for example. Okay, loss of sale because of changing public taste or changing public opinion with your brand. For example, your brand looks outdated, for example, not current enough or in trend enough to attract, buyers to buy. So you need to keep on changing your brand image, for example. And the fourth one is marketplace. Okay, with regards to usually when we talk about marketplace, is basically from external point of view. Okay, regulatory environment, whereby, for example, here changes in tax regime or in bank, for example, changes in OPR. Okay, changes in overnight policy rates, whereby the Bank Negara introduced new rates, and therefore you have to change your interest rate settings to your customers. For example, economic health, decline in rural or national economy reduces this consumer spending that cause your products to be less in demand because of the overall market, decline in terms of spending power of the consumer. Product development using technology, right? And also competitive behavior. So your competitor can reducing their price in order to win the market shares, and also to attract your customers to become their customers with price war. Okay, something like price war, whereby they use the price or cut their prices in order to attract new buyers. And this behavior will obviously return as a risk to you, because you might losing customers because they switch from your brand or your business to another competitor, right? So these are among the risks that you may face. And all of these can be, recorded or highlighted or list down based on all the relevant methods I mentioned earlier, the workshops, the interviews, the surveys, all the CE diagrams and everything. Okay. Again, this is from our first step, which is risk assessment. Okay, we assess all the relevant risks, and the first step in the risk assessment is risk identification. Next is the risk description. Okay, so all the identified risks now needs to be displayed and structured in a structured format. Okay, using a table, or in a business, usually they use a database as simple as in Excel, for example, Microsoft Excel. Okay, as simple as that, or if they have a dedicated software in order to maintain all the relevant risks in a register, for example, please do so. But as simple as Excel do, whereby you record all the relevant risks based on your identification, and you now display it in a structured format instead of writing down in the I don't know, old notebooks, okay, or registers, which is whereby you need to record manually, which is not updated regularly, so that will be not considered structured format. So you need to have a proper documentations, right? To facilitate the description and also how to assess the risk. So the third step is the estimation, as I mentioned. So estimation can be quantitative, semi-quantitative, or even qualitative in nature. Okay, and usually we will highlight the chances, again, the occurrence, and also the possible consequences. What will be the implications towards the risk? Okay, so again, there are a lot of methods or tools that can be used, including scenario planning, simulations. Okay, we can simulate, okay, based on these risks. If we don't do anything about it, what will happen? Okay, we can simulate. All right. So there's a lot of technical programs that you can use: Monte Carlo spreadsheet simulation, decision trees, SWOT analysis. I guess you've heard about it. SWOT analysis, whereby you can list down all the strengths, weaknesses, and the opportunities and threat, and then you can do something about it and estimate what will be the implication of the risk. Root cause analysis and so on. So there's a lot of estimation tools that can be used, right? So I highlighted some of the estimation methods here. For example, the one that commonly used as well, which by using probability. Okay, so many textbooks assume that they just gauge the probability or the likelihood or chance using a percentage. Okay, for example, here a business may consider a range of estimated weekly sales figures and assign to each responsibility. So as you can see here, the total probability will be obviously 100%. And we have 4 different sales levels: 90,000 to 120,000 ringgit. And out of these 4, okay, the highest probability would be at, okay, it's an extra zero, it's supposed to be 100,000 here. Okay, it's 100,000, 300,000. So 50% chance the company will achieve 100,000 ringgit. And the second highest probable will be 30%, 110,000. Okay, and 90 and 120,000 will be 10% each. Okay, by having this probability, you as a business owner, when you do some risk analysis, because when we talk about sales income, okay, you need to be flexible. Okay, flexible, number one. And second, you need to be robust with your estimation. You don't want to overestimate. And at the same time, you don't want to be underestimate. So that's why the highest and the lowest point with the lowest probability. So as you can see, the probability is centered around 100 and 10,000. With these two combined up to 80% of the chances it to occur. Okay, so this is one of the estimating method that can be used with related to sales figures. They have FEMEA, okay, failure mode and effects analysis. So this is a systematic brainstorming approach. Okay, and FEMEA, fault free, and everything I listed in this page is basically used in a complex manufacturing, such as in an automobile industry. Okay, whereby they are involved in more related of manufacturing or production approach. Okay, because their process is in the production approach, and one failure in the production can cause failures to the next one. Okay, it will be impacted from one to the following process. So therefore, this kind of approach is really important to see in which particular area have a different types of risk involved. Because if they don't cater for a certain process, then the following process will be delayed, and therefore it will cause the whole production to stop, for example. Okay, so this kind of industry can use this FMEA or fault tree analysis or even event tree analysis. Okay, they are more graphical and you can see in details the process with their potential failures. Cost benefit and risk benefit analysis, right? So root cause analysis, which will, when we talk about root cause analysis, for example, this is a method to investigate backwards, what will be the root cause of a certain incidents to happen. And in order to determine the root cause of issues, they will be continually asking why. So what does it mean? Okay, so let's say the issue of Again, if I want to give an example, usually I give example of bank. Okay, for example, what would be the cost of flow of new cards issuance, new credit card issuance, or why the number of new cards, new credit cards to customers is dropped this month, for example. So you need to ask why. Why the numbers of new customers for credit cards is down this month? Okay, that's number one. Why? First, why? Okay, because the number uh, the number of salesperson going out doing the marketing is strong this month. Okay, that's the reason number one. Less salesman or salesperson doing or going out to do sales activities this month. So you ask the next why. Okay, why there's less salesperson going out this month? Okay. Second, okay. Second why you ask, and the answer, let's say, a lot of resignation of salesperson this month. Okay. Then you ask next why. Okay, why there's a lot of resignation now? Okay, then they come up with okay, a lot of resignation because the salary is not attractive, the working condition is not good, long working hours and whatnot. Okay. Then ask again why. So when we talk about root cause, we are keep on asking why until we get to the final root cause. Okay, and that's how we use root cause analysis. Okay, so this is another estimation method that can be used. Okay, the method, this is quite technical. They are using questionnaires and they will be circulated to panel members, and this process will be repeated several times in order to achieve a convergence or opinion. Convergence here refers to a common or common opinions of a certain certain issues. Okay, the LT method is just like a study group, whereby you take a sample of a few members and then you will do or you will hand out some questionnaires for them to answer. Right, and next we have sensitivity analysis. Again, this is based on what if questions, and usually when we do sensitivity analysis, let's say we are using a quantitative approach, we use you know, numbers to calculate on certain, I don't know, profits or whatnot. We try to alter one variable. For example, you change a certain price or certain cost in your estimations, and you will see what we implication towards, for example, towards your profit. Okay, so this risk estimation method usually applicable if you want to calculate profits. Okay, it can be profits for your operating profit or even your net profit lah. Okay, so you change one variable, it can be your cost, variable or fixed cost, and then you see the implication towards your operating and also net profits. Okay, so this is can be done using sensitivity analysis. Okay, so Monte Carlo just now I mentioned they're using computer simulation and other software system. Okay, software system analysis, which is more complex, but you know, developing is complex, but using it obviously will be easier because you just key in your information and then they can come up with the issues and whatnot. So once you have that estimations, you can map. Okay, you can map the likelihood and the consequences matrix, and this one we've discussed before. For many organizations, they might use a 3x3 matrix with a high, medium, low. Okay, so as you all know, matrix is a simple two axis, right? You know, y and x axis here. So you can split 3x3, so meaning it will be something like this, 3x3, like that, 3 by, or suppose another one. Okay, 3x3. 1 to 3, 1 to 3, okay. Or 5 by 5 or even 7 by 7, depending on the requirement of the company. So you can put the livelihood and also the implication. So you can then list down all the relevant information or relevant risks related to the livelihood and also the implication, the impact, right? So these are the common terms that you can use with regards to explaining. Okay, depending on your matrix, either 3 by 3, so meaning 3 by 3, you only need 3 terms for each. Or if it's 5, you need more, right? How to express the terms. Like for example, this one ada 5 kan. Likelihood, they have 5 different terms that they can use. Almost certain, which is very certain to happen. Likely, okay, moderate will be in the middle. Unlikely or remote meaning very, very difficult to happen or very, very unlikely to happen. Okay, may occur only in exceptional circumstances. Okay, this is how you label the terms with regards to the likelihood. Depends. This is based on 5, for example. So if you have 3 by 3, maybe you can use likely, moderate, and unlikely. Just enough. Okay, and they will be the implication consequence. Okay, also based on 5 extreme, very high, medium, or negligible. Okay, so these terms can be used if you use 5 by 5. So if you use 3 by 3, you can remove the extreme parts, the highest and the lowest. So you just use the 3 in the middle. Okay, it's possible like that. Okay, so this is an example, right, of a risk matrix based on the severity, which is based on the impact, and also the likelihood, the chance. Okay, this using a 3 by 3 matrix, high impact, medium impact, low impact, and the likelihood low, again, medium and high. All right, so this example they use related to, okay, high impact issues with a low likelihood to have a failure of the system. The total failure, some glitch, maybe it's not considered failure. Failure here, sorry. Failure here means a total failure of your system. Imagine if you have an account bank, Maybank to you, for example, the whole Maybank to you to collapse. Okay, the impact is very crucial, but how likely it will happen is very low because they are maintained regularly. They have staff to maintain it, to look after it. So therefore, total value will be very, very low likelihood to happen. Okay, the extreme one maybe that you can see here with a high likelihood to happen in terms of risk, but very low impact. For example, inadequate R&D. Some companies even don't have budget for R&D. So, is it high likelihood? Yes, it can happen to any companies, especially if they have enough budgets. But is it implication to the company? Is it high? No, it's low because when they don't have R&D, they have other information or other options to do. So they can replicate other companies. They can, uh, do their research by themselves in terms of searching what would be relevant to them and benchmarking, for example. So those are alternative to R&D. Instead of do their own research and development, they can replicate. Here, obviously, when we talk about replicate, you need to make sure that that replication is within the legal sense. They don't do any illegal activities. Right? So yeah, that's some example when do risk metrics. And the output of it when we do the risk assessment is by having a risk register. Okay, to have a risk register, like I said, it's just one of the processes now is to have a systematic, documentation. The risk register is recommended that organization records all their risks in a risk register. So this can include some of the information. For example, unique identifier number. So this is basically the risk number. You label the numbers. right? Some just use a simple numbering system, some complicated ones, depends on the company. Some you want to, have, you know, detailed information inclusive of the the department's name, the types of risks involved, and the numbers, for example. So the identify number, it depends on the business or the company. The category of risk, description, the date of risk, and also who are the identifier, who are the one who identify these risks. You need to label them as well. And you can include any other information, inclusive of the likelihood. Okay, this is always put in the risk register, the consequences, the impact, and any other implication with other risks, and any other monetary estimation or implication towards losses, for example. Okay, so these are among the information that you can use in risk register. So this is one example of a risk register for a company. Okay, so these are the number system. It's very simple. You just want to use 1, 2, 3, 4 for this department, for example. This is about project management. Okay, so they have the date, their risk, the issues. Okay, the description, risk description is about the project sprints. Sprint is the name of the project. Stories are not well defined. Okay, so likelihood of the risk. Okay, they mention about the likelihood high, and they even put a color coded system here with red indicates high, amber medium, and green as low. Likelihood and implication as well. So for this number one, risk number one, the not well defined project sprint stories, both high chance and high risk, and the severity as well. Okay. They mentioned about who are the owners of the risk, what would be the actions can be taken in order to mitigate, okay, complete the project charter. So if you do a project management in the future, for example, as kebetulan, coincidentally, I've learned about project management before. Kalau you're interested with project management, there's a term or there's a guideline that you can refer to, PMBOK. Okay, project management book of knowledge. Okay, you can Google, they say everything, so you can Google. So you can Google PMBOK, project management book of knowledge, and one of the key document when we want to do project management is to have a project charter. In the project charter, just like you want to do a research, for example, you need to list down the objectives of the project management, what will be the mission vision, what will be the deadline, timeline, and whatnot. So the project charter usually can be done in one single page of a document, and you list down all the definition of projects and whatnots, person in charge, everything you need to put in the project charter. So how to mitigate this issue just now is by having a completed project charter. Okay, so that all requirements are gathered properly. So what are the contingency plan? If this is not taken, you need to highlight the issues to the project board. So they have a higher level whereby they need to report if there's any incomplete project charter, for example. So progress on project charter should be rewritten with a full business case and requirements. And what are the current status? Is it open or in progress, or sometimes the risk is already closed, for example. And they also put resources relevant, for example, project charter templates. Okay, so in order to ensure that future projects have a proper or similar project charter, or synchronized or standardized project charter, so therefore the company come out with a proper template. So therefore every project in the future will have a similar project charter. Okay, so this is one example how to define the risk, and then the list down the likelihood, the severity, the impact, what would be the action or mitigation plan can be used, the contingency plan if necessary, what is the current status, and perhaps if there's any resources that can be shared among the employees. Okay, so we have 6 you can go through on your own. So RAPNI meaning high likelihood and high impact. But not necessarily when we talk about high likelihood, it will be high severity or impact, okay, depending on the scenarios. Okay, so that's our first step, risk assessment. Okay, we identify, define, estimates, and the final output is to have a risk register. And second is actually depends on the risk management policy of the company. Okay, so before responses, the one I mentioned is including the response and mitigation techniques. Imagine this chart is incomplete. We just have this part only. Up until this part, this is basically our first step, which is risk assessment. Okay, before we come up with actions and whatnot, we actually needs to proper policy with regards to the organization's attitude towards risk, which is also known as risk appetite. I already mentioned about risk appetite multiple times already. Risk appetite is basically the company's or the organization's attitude towards a certain risk. Okay, some can be, risk averse. Some can be risk taker, for example. So risk averse meaning they try to avoid any types of risk. So their attitude is very, very defensive towards any risk. They don't want to take any risk. Some organization willing to take some risk. Okay, so as a company, as an organization, you need to set up the policy depending on the risk appetite. And this risk appetite will be influenced by the type and size of the company, right? And also obviously the culture, right? So the risk management process requires commitment. Again, this one we discussed in the previous video. All the top management must commit to all the relevant risk management process, assignment of responsibilities, who are the charge, right? And allocation of the necessary resources. Okay, just just now, as you can see, the relevant resources, including as simple as template of project charter. Once you have a proper risk management policy, you know your risk appetite, you need to treat or to respond to the risk. Okay, so this is a process of selecting and implementing measures in how to manage the risk. So the challenge for risk managers is to determine a portfolio of appropriate responses. Sometimes you can use just one response or one steps to treat or to respond to it, or some you need to use multiple approach or a portfolio of it. So it is important to note that there is no right. Okay, there is no right or wrong in terms to response to risk. This is basically a process of identifying what will be the solutions. Obviously, you need to monitor it in the future. So if you find that your solution is not correct or not helping to reduce or to minimize the risk, you may have to change your response in order to try to minimize the risk in the future. Okay, so there will be no correct risk, okay, at any point of time. So risk response involve, for example, setting a policy, okay, defining the organization's attitude, define the accountability of the person in charge, what would be the management processes currently used in the risk to manage the risk, recommend the business processes to reduce the residual risk, key performance measures, contingency plan, just like we've seen in the risk registers earlier. Okay, so what would be the response? Okay, the risk response. The risk response can fall into 4 categories. risk avoidance, risk reduction, risk sharing, or risk acceptance. And every one categories here have an alternative name for it. Okay, risk avoidance equivalent to terminate. Risk terminate, we try to terminate the risk or try to avoid it altogether. You don't want that risk. So actually to halt, okay, to stop the activities, giving it's such a high risk that the consequences is very, very fatal, for example. Okay, that the risk can affect the product line, the whole geographical market, for example. So you need to stop altogether. Okay, so you terminate it. Number two, you try to reduce it by do some treatment. Okay, so action is taken to mitigate. Okay, remember, mitigating is just like a try to reduce the risk of likelihood impact for both or generally via internal controls. Number three, resharing or transfer. Okay, and as I mentioned in the previous video as well, so the easy example when we talk about sharing or transfer is through insurance, okay, or takaful, or you can outsource the process to external parties. Okay, you don't do your own, you outsource it, and the risk now being transferred to the third party, okay, for a certain process. Or by doing hedging. Okay, this is a technical term or financial terms when we do hedging. It's basically to reduce the impact of when we do with hedging. Usually we try to take a safer approach when we are exposed to changes, okay, in price, changes in price or rate, for example. So changes in price hedging example. I'm sure you are in semester, but hedging is if you learn finance before in other courses, you've heard about hedging. Okay, so basically hedging is a process of when you are expecting price of your, I don't know, raw materials are going up in the future. So in order to hedge the potentially of higher price, you do a contract whereby you set the price, lower than your expected price in the future. So this hedging process will minimize the cost or minimize the effect of price changes in the future. Okay, I'm not talking about it in detail, but you can, search what does hedging mean. So it's simply as what's your response when you are expecting your raw material prices to go up in the future. So you do a separate contract, set the hedging price to be lower, so that when the price is going up in the future, you are already protect yourself with a lower price now because you already have a agreement with your supplier by using hedging process, right? And the fourth category would be risk acceptance, tolerated, meaning you do nothing, no action will be taken, and you just leave the risk as it is. So meaning if it happen, you just leave it, you live with it. Okay. So usually when we talk about risk tolerate or acceptance, usually it will be a very, very even the chances to be is very high, but the implication towards the company is almost zero. Okay. There's no use for you to do anything about it. So therefore you just accept what will happen. Okay, so all the T's here, okay, terminate, treat, transfer, and tolerate, can be simplified using the four T's elements. So sometimes it's also known as when we talk about response to risk using four T's criteria. So four T's here refers to terminate, treat, transfer, and tolerate. Right, sorry, I think my computer disconnect. So let's resume to the 40s just now I mentioned about the transfer terminate, tolerate, and treat, and how we put it in the matrix. Okay, so here in the matrix, you can see there's the likelihood on the x-axis and the impact on the y-axis. Okay, and here we can put the highest element of all, which is in the terminate. Okay, right? And by the terminate is when we try to avoid the risk. Okay, so this is an activity that you can try to terminate, or you can put extra measures in order to terminate the risk, or to stop the risk to happen. Okay, by put extra measures to it, for example. Then we have high impact, but with a low likelihood to happen. Okay, by transfer it to another party. So this example just now I gave you with regards to insurance or hedging. Okay, how we can reduce the implications of the risk, either by transferring to a third party insurance company, or from financial point of view, you can use hedging when we talk about fluctuations. If there's fluctuation of price involved with regards to your business, so you can do hedging. Okay, this is to transfer the risk to another party. Or if it's high likelihood to happen but low impact, this is the treat. Okay, reduce the likely impact of the exposure. And lastly is the tolerate. Okay, tolerate meaning you do nothing about it because it is low likelihood to happen and it is low impact. Okay. So example of the hierarchy of hazard controls. For example, from termination point of view, we can put limit of authorizations, okay, or separation of duties. So meaning, example, when we talk about fraud risk, you can stop the risk to happen if you, for example, limit the authorization. So meaning, for example, in a bank, branch managers have limits with regards to approval. Okay, so meaning one branch manager can approve, for example, hire purchase account, car financing, up to 200,000. So meaning if a customer wants to, purchase a car, if the price is below 200,000, so the branch manager can approve it. But if the price is above 200,000, so the branch manager needs to submit the application to the higher authority. Okay, it can be regional managers or it can be managers in the head office. Okay, so this is a control in order to avoid fraud risk. Okay, so they put a certain measures in order to terminate the activities. Okay, again, another example, human resource department, HRD, can terminate the risk with regards to employing a new staff. Okay, employing new staff. So how to avoid picking up, selecting wrong employees ataupun inefficient employees. Okay, so they can use pre-employment screening. So before they hire new staff, they do proper checking. Okay, proper screening of the staff, check dengan previous employers, how the potential staff will behave in the previous companies, any bad records or not, and this will reduce the risk of employing wrong ataupun inefficient employees. Okay, or even beside inefficient, this is also can be if we want to see whether these employee have a bad records. Okay, are they involved in fraud cases before or not? Okay, this can be checked by using pre-employment screening. Okay, with regards to treat category, you can use staff rotation, for example. Okay, so in order to avoid the risk of a certain activities to be done by the same staff every time, okay, usually in banks again, staff rotation is very normal. Okay, like for example, in a bank, um, sometimes when we talk about financing or loan in simple activities, yeah, when a customer want to apply for a specific loan, dia akan go through first is loan processing. Okay, once dia dah process, dia akan go towards approval. Dah process, approval, dah approve, they could go to disbursement. Okay, so once dah disburse, dah give out the money to the customer, monitoring for services. Okay, so each and every process here will be done by different employees, different staff. So in order to avoid any, issues of manipulation or fraud activities, staff presentation can be done, meaning staff A, first they will letakkan low processing for a few years. After a few years, they swap into approval, disbursement, or monitoring activities. So by doing this, this will reduce the potential of fraud by customers, especially if they are in, let's say, loan processing. Okay, loan processing are the gatekeeper yang that will what call it, they process and then they akan recommend. They will recommend for approval to the branch manager or to whoever approving authorities. Okay, so if they are do the same job scope for a long time, they have access to the customer. So maybe there's a potential of some loan processing staff, do some potentially fraud with the customer. If you want me to recommend this loan application, okay, give me some money so that I can recommend. So that kind of risk can be minimized if they rotate the staff instead of keep the same staff doing the same thing throughout their career, for example. So you can treat this kind of risk by using staff rotation. Okay, you can transfer by sending them to training. Okay, training also is another element of how to transfer the risk, how to minimize risks by reducing the risk of doing mistakes in their jobs by sending to training. And lastly, tolerate, which is do nothing. In terms of avoiding the risk, but you can put some scopes with regards to do health surveillance. Okay, just do a simple test in order to find early symptoms. Okay, in current condition, the swab test, for example, the swab test for COVID is one of example of we during 2 years ago we don't tolerate, obviously, we don't tolerate, but now after uh everyone can go to work, everyone can go to classes now. So one of the key things that you can do or some organizations are doing is actually to have their employees to do swab tests just to see or to detect any symptoms. That's it. Okay. And finally, at number 4, after you do the risk treatment, is to do reporting. Okay, so the risk reporting includes a systematic review of the risk forecast or activities, at least annually, once a year. A review of the management responses to the significant risks, and also what are the strategies. You need to highlight this so that management can respond to it and also take actions towards the risk. Monitoring and feedback loop will always be on in order to ensure the risk treatment is working, or if possible, if not working, they can take action in order to improve their risk treatment. They need to have an early warning system or like a flag system, okay, in order to trigger, basically, if there's any changes necessary in terms of risk yang sebelum ni low in terms of the likelihood to happen ataupun the implication, now they increase to medium or even high. Okay, remember tadi dalam risk register we have the green, the amber and the red. Maybe there's a changes from green to amber, or even worst case scenario from amber to red. So you need to have that system so that you can alert the relevant parties to be aware of the changes. And obviously, we must include audit work as part of communication, because as I mentioned earlier, audit will be one of the key source of information with regards to the identification of risk. And at the same time, audit reports will be a medium or a tool to communicate the reporting process. So the reporting needs to address the control systems so that it will be in place for the risk management. So it will need to be highlighted in the reports. All the processes used to identify must be highlighted in the reports in order to respond as well to the risk. What will be the methods used to manage the risk? Remember dalam risk register earlier, there's one section of mitigation, kan? So mitigation is the risk response mitigation process. So what are the methods being used? You remember just now in the first example, whereby there's a not properly defined in terms of the project definition. So what will be the method used? They come up with to have a proper or completed project charter, and they include resources as well, the project charter template. So that would be method used, how to mitigate the risk, and finally how to monitor and review. Remember, one of the column in the risk register is about status. And status is basically a monitoring system to see whether the the risk still active and labeled as open, or is it in progress, meaning the risk is being treated. Okay, and want to see whether the risk will be reduced or even eliminate altogether, or if it done or closed. Okay, so this is another monitoring system that can be used in order to see the status. So the risk reporting are important to two parties or two areas. Okay, first is from external point of view. Okay, so external point of view requires the risk reporting to see what are the approach the companies are using, what will be their stand with regards to the risk management, and what are the actions they are taking with regards to risk management. In a certain country, like in the UK, for example, it is important. It is a mandatory, meaning when we talk about mandatory, meaning it's a must for the for an organization to have operating and financial review as part of their annual reports. Okay, they must include one section about risk reporting in their annual reports. So when we talk about annual reports, obviously this will be published. And when we talk about document being published, this will be accessible to everybody. Okay, everybody. Means everybody who can access to this document can refer to this document to see the risk reporting. So obviously when we talk about this kind of reporting, it will not be in details. It will be a general statements with a general overview of the approach of risk treatment and also all the relevant information in the risk reporting. Okay, even in Malaysia pun, I think it is available in their annual reports, especially those in Berhad company lah, Berhad or public listed company. Okay, public listed company. And this is from external. Obviously, the more important parts of risk reporting is towards the internal audience. When we talk about the internal audience, usually we are referring to the top management. Okay, top management will require this risk reporting to make decisions, internal decision, to evaluate the performance basically. Okay, the performance of the staff or even the department. And when we do review of performance, obviously it will relate with compensation or reward decisions. Okay, what kind of compensation or reward decision? For example, annual bonus. Okay, public servant obviously bonus. Okay, bonus. Obviously, public servant will not be applicable to this, but for most of corporations, organizations out there, especially in the private sectors, compensation or reward decisions in terms of how to derive the right rewards to the staff. One of the key elements is by looking at the performance of the staff, and obviously risk reporting will be one of the documents they will look into in terms of how the risk factors incorporate in their performance on daily basis. Is there any element of fraud involved, for example, in efficiencies? Okay, is there any special training needs to be done for them, for example, that costs, or not costs, are basically because of their inefficiencies, the company needs to spend for training and whatnot. So obviously their performance for that year is not that as high as compared to their colleagues, for example. And when they not perform well, obviously their compensation reward will be lower than the colleagues, for example. So those are internal importance of internal reporting towards the top management relating to the risk reporting as well. Okay, so I think that's about it when we talk about how to manage risk in a general approach. Okay, in a general approach, a generic approach, right? So they have the risk assessment first step, whereby they need to identify and also label the risk, and then risk register is a recommended document to have, whereby it will list down all the relevant risks with a specific numbering system, risk identification and whatnot. Then the company needs to have a proper risk management policy. They need to highlight their, risk tolerance and also their risk appetite and their behavior towards the risk. And then once you have the risk identified, you need to treat or respond to the risk. Okay, so there are the 40s just now I mentioned, whether to treat, whether to transfer, whether you terminate, okay, depending on the the metrics as well, high level, high implications, high likelihood to happen, you transfer or terminate on right sort two needs to terminate kan. And the least case scenario, meaning low implication, low risk, you do nothing about it, or uh you just accept the risk, okay, and do nothing about it, or you just put a simple process to determine early symptoms, for example, I gave earlier. And lastly, once you have the relevant treatment of the risk, you need to make sure that you on monitoring the risk and do the risk reporting, either both to external parties and internal parties. And this needs to be done at least once a year. All right. So I think that's about it for this video. All right. And thank you very much for your time. Share with your friends, your colleagues, and I'll see you guys either in the next video or in the class. All right. Thank you very much and goodbye.